meeting at 8:03 p.m. Present this evening is board member Mr. Krasnoff, Mr. Lee, Mrs. Flynn, myself, Mrs. Jacobson, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, Mr. Peterson, Mrs. Rinaldi, and we are very grateful to have our special moderator this evening, Ms. Amy Ruggiero, member of our Fairfield Board of Finance, moderating today's event this evening. So thank you very much, Ruggiero, for being here. If everyone could please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance before we get started. And Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, would you like to start us?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This item is discussion of facilities, finances, and programs. So we like to have these meetings every so often, at least a couple of times a year, where we invite the public to come and engage more in a dialogue with board members on matters, questions pertaining to our facilities, programs, or finances. Personnel matters are not permissible here, and they're limited to these topics. So how the process normally flows before I turn it over to our moderator is you just come up, say your name, your address, have about up to 2 minutes to present your topic, ask any question you may have. Board members are then called upon to answer as they wish to. And not everyone has to answer every question, of course. And then we like to keep things rolling on like about a 10-minute basis or so, so that other people have the opportunity to come up. And of course, we can return if we have more time at the end. So with that, I will turn the management of the meeting over to Amy Ruggiero, and we could start. And there's no particular order or formality to it. You just come as you wish and raise your topics of interest. And by the way, thank you all for coming out tonight and being with us this evening. We're so happy to have everyone here. So, all right, we can get going.
Hi, thank you guys for coming. I'd like to invite somebody to come up, whoever wants to take the stage first.
You just want to let us know your names and
My name is Margot. My name is Grace. My name is Ella.
Stella.
My name is Smith.
Hi. What's your topic today?
We are here to follow up letters sent to Mr. Testani and Mr. Mancusi in May 2023 about our school facilities because we didn't get a response.
Want to state your school that you're at?
Jennings. We are a Girl Scout troop of 5th graders from Jennings Elementary. We noticed a problem when being outside on school grounds. There are limited options for students in wheelchairs at Jennings upper playgrounds. Our friend and fellow Girl Scout, Stella, has to spend recess watching from the blacktop. Wheelchairs cannot be maneuvered on a wood chip surface. This material creates a tripping hazard for everyone. Wood chips get kicked around the playground, making some areas like under the swings no protection.
Do you think that replacing the wood chips with rubber playground surfacing would make the existing playground safer and more fun for everyone? Another idea to make playtime more inclusive would be to add ramps on the blacktop to create obstacles for wheelchairs to maneuver over. Our Girl Scout troop discussed these ideas in our meeting and are asking you to help make the playground more accessible before we graduate. Our troop can help by raking up existing wood chips to be disposed of. We can also ask the PTA and school community to help fund our efforts and donate a portion of our cookie proceeds.
We first sent a letter to our principal, Mr. Roller, and we were told the cost would be too expensive to make these changes. However, through our research, we have discovered that the playground is violating the ADA regulations to meet our fellow Girl Scout needs. According to the ADA, An accessible playground is one that offers a range of play experience to children of varying abilities. There must be an accessible path from the edge of the play area to the pavement surfacing that complies with ASTM 195.
My name is Stella Hoffman. I think it's a fantastic idea to put rubber floor outside, as children in wheelchairs cannot play on the playground with wood chips. This is important because people who are in wheelchairs can play with their friends instead of waiting on the blacktop with their friends to play with them. Having this in the playground would make me happy, because other kids in wheelchairs can play on the playground with everyone else. I hope that you can help to make Jennings School a more accessible playground for everyone in wheelchairs.
Listening about this facility problems at our school due to health reasons.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone like to respond? Mr. Krasnoff.
Thank you, ladies. What a good presentation. You guys did a lot of research. Into what ADA compliance is, which is pretty impressive. And honestly, from my end, and I can't speak for the rest of the board, would love to see how this looks like and what we could do, whether it's retrofitting or rubber floor. I'm not sure. I can't make any promises, but I'm thank you.
Jason Lee.
Great job. I second what Mr. Krasnoff said. Goal, not this week, but we could discuss our facilities meetings, definitely to look into. Right, we've done enough school projects to know, and wood chips are there for a reason. We can find out how we can get those out. Put something in, because you're right, you need to be on that playground, right? Definitely. Should be watching on the sideline.
Glenn.
You guys were very good advocates today, not only for your school, but for yourselves and especially for a friend. And that's a hard thing to do. So I want to commend you all. And part of our job is to be an advocate for you. So what I'm hearing tonight is one of the things that we look at is our budget and our facilities. So I can promise you what we're going to do is keep asking our facilities committee. And when we do look at our budget right around the winter time, you know, we'll make sure that we're looking where Jennings is, where this playground is, because I can say that I would love to see the cost and what it looks like, but I can't say you didn't advocate well, so I would absolutely support getting this done.
Anyone else like to respond? Jacobson?
Thank you for coming forward today and presenting your issue with us. Do have schools in Fairfield that are not up to ADA compliances, and it's something that we have been working on to address throughout the district. Jennings happens to be one of those locations. It's due for renovations, and I think that the policy, budget, and the implications of this is perfect timing actually as we look at these issues. And I certainly am happy to follow up, whether it's through committee or through our superintendent. If there is any short-term possibilities in the interim before the budget, because that wouldn't be until the next following year, obviously. So that's something that I can do as well. But thank you for coming and advocating. Thank you.
Anyone like to come up next? Give your name and address.
Hi, I'm Lauren Field. I live on Wellington Drive. And I am a parent of a Ludlow alum. He's now a sophomore in college. And I have a daughter who is currently a sophomore at Ludlow. So post 10/7, I co-founded FJAC, which is the Fairfield Jewish Advocacy Coalition. It's an interfaith parent and teacher grassroots organization to combat anti-Semitism and promote Jewish heritage. I'm here tonight to ensure a better system to address hate and bullying, that it's on the agenda. As I have written to you, Jew hate incidents are surging across the country and here in Patriots. With the elections coming and the continued war and the war misinformation about the war and about Israel, we only see it continuing to skyrocket. FJAC is advocating for Fairfield schools to create a central repository for bullying and hate incidents, and then track to ensure resolutions. It is not appropriate to only rely on ETL data. We need to have school by school data, capture and document follow-up of the incidents through resolution. We need to ensure the incidents are reported on the Awareness link and are answered. We have too many examples of Jew hate incidents which are not addressed fully, properly, or fully. We want to help, and we need help. We recommend more simplistic outlines of what a child or parents can specifically do if they experience hate and bullying. The current policies that Ms. Maxine Kennelly shared are comprehensive, and we want them enforced and easy to understand communication tools to support. We can continue to work with you on progress so we can stop this game of whack-a-mole. Students do not. Sadly, we have many examples of bullying and Jew hate incidents that have not been addressed. And I also want to add, and please continue to consider the FJAC volunteer guidelines we submitted to all of you and to Mr. Testani. We cannot have another Bird Diversity Day or a mini DEI parent-led event with historical or geographical false information or upsetting hateful imagery. We know guidelines and checks and balances can fix this.
Would anyone like to respond?
I just asked you a question, in talking about the policies, since we're, as a board, our large portion of our authority is in crafting policies. Do you have specific recommendations for how our policies could change? I mean, you mentioned talking to Ms. Maxine Kennelly, who's the chair of our policy committee.
Well, for one, it's parents don't know what to do, even though the policies are there. I can't even tell you how many parents have come to us and said, my child has experienced this. I have reported it on the Awareness. I have reported it to the principal. I have, and nothing's been done. So I'm not sure where the disconnect, it's being lost. And having read the policies, it's very comprehensive. And truthfully, I mean, I have a master's degree. It's really hard to understand. It's hard to, like parents, it needs to be easier. And again, like we need a central repository. We're working on this with town as well, but where this data is collected. And then many times parents say, well, I did report it and I don't know if anything was done, or like, there's just no follow-up and what's happening. And then we've also heard where things have been covered up, or it just seems like it's just need a central repository.
Sure, I guess a couple of thoughts that occurred to me with that. I take your point about policy complexity, and having in the past served on that committee, we agonize sometimes over a single sentence and how can this be misinterpreted, or is it doing what we want it to do? But the disconnect that you're talking about is perennial, where there is a policy for so many things and it's not always obvious where that is. And that's something we struggle with in a range of policies. I guess there's one other question about the repository. I think I get what that you want that granular information. Are you looking for a public database? I mean, you're talking about like things getting covered up, and
there just seems to be there's a disconnect between, I mean, for example, what happened at Burr. Many other principals don't even know what happened. And there's been no solution. There's been no resolution. There's been nothing. And so this parent is still dealing with this horrible incident that happened and nothing has been done. And furthermore, and then other schools are planning these events and principals don't know what happened at this one. So it just, there needs to be, I guess, better communication. And then again, like an easier system where people can report. I mean, again, even with the Awarity, there just seems to be misinformation and some kind of a disconnect where it's just made it's too complicated. And then parents are felt like they hear their child was being bullied or, you know, anti-Semitic comments made, and yet they're made to feel like they are doing something wrong for reporting it in the wrong place. Or, and there's also, so there's just, we need help and we want to help you to make this better. So that our children feel safe and feel that if they do report something, they know that something's being done about it and that there are consequences. And I know, you know, we don't have to necessarily know what the consequences are for those that are committing these acts, but just that it's not getting brushed under the rug and that something's happening and that there's some kind of restorative justice and consequences. And again, like it is important, the ADL does need to know. Absolutely, but that can't be the only solution.
Quick follow-up, the Awarity link that you're talking about, is that the anonymous tip line?
Yes.
Okay, so
Say
just wanted to clarify that. Yeah, so the anonymous tip line, I mean, I'm curious to hear that nothing's being followed up on because again, I mean, I don't want to go back to complexity of policy, but we do have that, anything that is anonymously reported through that tip line must be investigated through that. So that is definitely something I can follow up on to make sure that is happening, whether it be for this or like any incident that someone might be reporting on their aircraft, but that is standing policy. And then we are required by state law, there is a central repository of incidents and disciplines and that we must report to the state of Board of Education, the district, the state department. And though you don't have obviously identifiable information on those dashboards, but all like our counts by school and by the district for bullying, harassment, violation of school policies, threatening behavior, there's multiple different categories. So that is all public information. I understand you're looking for specific but that does already
Up to date.
and it includes like how many in-school suspensions you had, how many out-of-school suspensions you had, how many expulsions you had. So, and I'm happy to walk through where that all lives. If you, so some of these things do exist. It just might not be as.
And again, I'm representing our group and this is, you know, parents have come to us to say, my child was bullied. My child experienced hate, my child had, and you know, I have complained to the principal, I have done this, I have done all of that, and they still feel like nothing has happened. This problem hasn't been solved. And
Certainly don't want anyone to feel unsafe or
feel safe or unsafe.
This is and you're coming to us with, you know, kind of an after the fact situation. I would say on a broader scale, prevention is also on the continuum keenly important. That we are ensuring safe school climate plans are implemented in our buildings, that we are teaching, modeling at home and at schools, kindness to our peers. And that the expectation is to have learning and working environments in all of our schools that are conducive for all students. So I assure you the prevention side is also important to me on this side, as well as what happens after the fact, all of our kids. So appreciate you coming.
And it just lastly, like, seems to also be a little bit of a confusion where like who the parents are supposed to report to. Some told it's the principal, some are told it's the assistant principal. And then again, with the anonymous hotline, supposedly it goes right to the principal. But then what? So again, what happened at Burr, nothing has happened. So, and that wasn't, I mean, that many people, and we just, nothing has has happened. Nothing has changed.
We're at the 10-minute mark, but I want to give you a moment just to respond.
Just a quick one, but you spoke quickly to the work with the town and other communities. While you have the floor, is there anything that you and your members have seen locally, nationwide, that you think has worked? Ideas, like you have a floor with all of us, so maybe
Thank you.
some concrete.
So one of the things that we're working on is we are doing anti-Semitism briefings. So we are working with the AJC, which is the oldest Jewish civil rights organization since it started in the early 1900s. So we are actually, Mr. Gerber is, we are co-hosting, and he's inviting, we're doing a huge anti-Semitism briefing with town officials, elected officials, and then actually we're going to be doing it in the schools as well with a different organization for principals, because as we know, there's so much education that needs to be done, and there's just so much misinformation, and teachers are scared. Teachers are afraid to say the wrong thing, the right thing, and because of the phones, they're just, so we really want to, and thank you for working with us, because we want to help. We don't want to tell you what to do. We are convening with the experts, bringing in people who have done extensive research, and we just want to convene and share the information that we know, and really it starts with education. So
Yeah, thank you. Please continue to share that with us so we be in the loop, especially the work with our schools, which I assume is being done with Mr. Tastani. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate it. Anyone else want to come up? How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
We're allowed to ask you questions directly. I'm Lauren Efren, 241 Burke Street.
Came to Board of Finance.
I don't know if you're just a facilitator or if.
Oh, the moderator. So I'm here and that's.
It's really the Board of Education.
That's fine, that's fine. Just didn't know in what capacity I could frame my questions. So thank you, first of all, for your support of the long range facilities plan and the capital projects. The vote last week felt like sort of the culmination of a lot of discussion. The Dwight community, especially just one, to stay open for the past 2 years, and then to sort of advocate that we could help solve the overutilization at some of the other schools, and hopefully also the ECC crisis. But I feel like we are now at the next step. I know what the next step is not in your hands, it's in the next town board, but I wanted to sort of ask what recourse could there be if it is not applied to an agenda for a future town meeting? It doesn't get in front of the Board of Finance, then what? I guess it's just more on my part, I don't understand the process, and I was hoping that one of you could help for a community.
I mean, I'll just say straight out, we have no control over other boards' agendas. And we're often at the mercy of other town bodies' schedules. We're not our own funding authority. School districts elsewhere in the country are. That's not the way we're structured here in Connecticut. So in terms of recourse, I don't know that any exists about being able to, as a member of the public, pressure a board to put something on their agenda. I mean, I would encourage advocacy, absolutely, and ongoing communication. I think that's the most productive way to things move forward. Parent involvement is always a way to also kind of make sure the momentum is maintained. But unfortunately, as we are responsible for what we're responsible for, and we make our requests even at budget time. What we make is a request to the town, and we are at the mercy of what the town provides for us.
Understood. I'm sorry.
Mrs. Flynn?
I would also say, to Mr. Peterson's point about advocacy, I think it's good to kind of, at this stage, kind of zoom out a little bit and remember that many of us have spent a lot of time in this room and certain venues discussing these topics. And a lot of the information, knowledge, you know, the stepping stones to kind of get where we got to last week were embedded in that. So while I very much empathize going to another meeting, writing another email, what I would say to not only the Dwight community, but our entire community is that, you know, advocating to the other town bodies is just as important at every stage of our, whether it's our normal operating budget, our capital budget, anything along the way. That communication with our other town bodies is vitally important because they hear what they hear and they want to hear from our constituents. I would assume that as much as we do here. So I would continue communicating with I would start throwing that word all in.
The chair of the Board of Finance did point out, however, they can't respond back to our emails, whereas Board of Ed does.
I believe that the only reason that they couldn't respond, I was at the capital planning meeting you're referring to. I was at that meeting, I believe, and maybe we can pass through, I don't even know who I'm asking, it's a different meeting. I think it was a clerical issue.
Can respond back.
Yeah.
That's,
The Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen can respond to you.
yes.
Maybe I misunderstood that. I thought she said she could see them, but they were anonymous because how.
It was a technological issue.
Yeah, I think there was a tech issue.
Okay. Appreciate that. And we are continuing to advocate to those other boards. I guess because this has been where we have traditionally gone, and I figured you would know. Sorry, I would like to say something.
So, I got some fellow comments, just for people who may not be aware. So once something leaves us, it then goes to the Board of Selectmen. If it passes there, then it goes to the Board of Finance, and if it passes there, it goes to the RTM for ultimate review. So as Mr. Peterson was saying, we don't really approve much other than what we're asking for when it comes to capital or the operating budget. I would hope that all boards would at least want to have anything that we deemed important enough on an agenda to at least have questions, to have a discussion about that and not withhold the opportunity to do so if people of this board who are charged with the care and well-being of our schools, our staff and students, that would at least be a point in time. Whether or not move forward after that, obviously, as has been stated, we don't have any control over that other than our advocacy. But I would hope that all three boards would respect our board enough in order to at least have that conversation and answer questions that they might have, which they do have questions and of course are entitled to have them. So that would be my position on that. But technically,
I think I wanted to hear from you directly and so that everyone else could understand better the process.
next is Board of Selectmen, so that would be up to the first select person to put that on an agenda.
That Board of Finance and then RTM.
For any of the things, whether it's the roofs or the turf or.
So there was some discussion also at that meeting of a tour of Dwight and I haven't heard anything since. I don't know if it's arranged.
I'm not aware if.
Am I allowed to answer that? It has been arranged. So there's the date, if you want to, that we're going. And we're having a funding committee meeting on Thursday, this coming Thursday, at Town Hall. And it's the committee meeting, not the Board of Finance, but we're going to be talking about a lot of the bigger items on the capital planning and how to help work with the institution.
What time is that at?
I believe it's at 7. Mr. Krasnov.
We're also continuing to advocate and answer questions as to our position that we put forward to the other boards that have asked questions. We're meeting tomorrow, facilities meeting with some questions. Forward.
Everyone could just speak up though, because I just want to make sure the fair, I can't.
Sorry, I'm not by the mic. So as I was saying, we are continuing to answer questions that other boards are sending us and continuing to advocate for what we put forward as a board, as our request. Tomorrow we are having a facilities meeting at 2 p.m. It will be the ability for the public to listen in, and it will be recorded, at which time we do plan to go over some of these questions.
Mr. Lake?
Should be noted though, that I think all our facilities meetings have been recorded and are on public record. And anything that's mentioned there and any handouts are on public file and public record.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate all the work the Facilities Committee has put in. The amount of hours, it didn't quite feel like every person who was at that meeting thoroughly read everything that you guys put together. That was a little frustrating just from the public perspective, from a my perspective. I know how much went into that, so thank you. And I hope, as these meetings go forward, that more information and, communication back and forth will happen between the two boards. They can better understand why you've got to the conclusions that you have. I think as Jacobson said, the spitball time is over. We've thrown enough spitballs at the wall to see what would stick. So I just appreciate that decision. Thank you. And that was really it. I just wanted to sort of understand it better from you.
Just to confirm, the meeting is 7 tomorrow and the tour looks like it's going to be on the 12th of this month.
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Next.
Hi, my name is Nina Salzman. I live at 64 Shoreham Village Drive. I have a second grader at Sherman Elementary. I have a ninth grader at Fairfield Ludlow. And I'm here on behalf of my fellow parents to address the high school start time, which is 7:30 a.m. as we all know. And Connecticut it ranks fourth across the country for the earliest start times for high school. In spite of all the research that shows that high school students benefit from a later start time. I don't have to lay it on the table. It's there for you to see. Just simply Google the research. There's plenty of research that demonstrates that high school students benefit from a later start time because of their circadian rhythm. High schoolers still need 10 hours of sleep. They're not adults. They still are growing, developing children. And I feel the 7:30 a.m. Start time shortchanges their mental and physical development, mental health. Apparently it has been 10 years since the Board of Education has addressed this issue. So I'd like to bring it back to your awareness. I don't stand alone in this concern. I haven't conducted a formal survey. I would like to turn it over to the PTA board. I don't know who to conduct a formal survey of parents in the community, but I can tell you that there was a study out of the Yale School of Public Health recently that was conducted. A student at the Yale School of Public Health conducted a survey in the Fairfield and Trumbull community, in which 95% of families surveyed, middle school and high school families surveyed, advocated for or stated that they would prefer a later start time past 8 a.m. 75% said that they preferred a start time past 8 a.m., 20% preferred a start time past 8:30 a.m., and only 4% of the families surveyed preferred to continue to, to support the 7:30 a.m. start time. That's only 4%. So I urge you to readdress this issue. Hopefully there's a pause now in your, I know that I had spoken to Mr. Cummings, Mike Cummings, several years ago when I first moved to Fairfield. And he was very supportive, very responsive. He said that COVID took precedence and that's why this issue wasn't addressed, but it was on the agenda. And then I don't know what happened to it. I know that it's been over 10 years since it was addressed, and I would like some support in readdressing the issue. Like I said, the study has already been conducted. Unfortunately, the woman who posted the survey, I guess her son attended Yale and she posted on his behalf. And I haven't been able to connect with her I wanted to bring it to the table here, but her name is Sarah Newland, if you want to research her. She's on the Fairfield Public School Parents of Fairfield, whatever the Facebook group is. She's on there. I haven't been able to connect with her. And I just wanted to bring it to your attention. 9 states have already mandated that high schools don't start later than, 8 a.m. or whatnot. So that's legislation that has been passed across the country. I'm sure Connecticut is eventually going to get there. But I feel like it's something that should be discussed, because at some point, I think it's going to be, more and more states are going to be coming to the realization that 7:30 a.m. is much too early. I know there are many logistical issues. I am not in favor of switching the elementary and high school start times. I don't believe elementary should be waiting for the bus at 6:30 a.m. either. I don't think that's the way to go. I don't think many parents would be, I don't think that would be a popular move. I'm not saying that there's an easy solution, but I do feel that this is something that should be looked into. I just feel like it's something that should be addressed. And I know redistricting was a big issue that took precedence after COVID. It seems like there's a little pause in that. So I'm hoping that this is the year that maybe this could be revisited.
Okay, I'd like to give you guys a chance to respond, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you for that. And I haven't been on the board 10 years, but I do remember as a PTA rep last time this came up, and I'm certainly happy to have the discussion about it. As you mentioned, though, one of the in the debate back then, and I'm sure it's current now, a lot of operational challenges come up with that. And look, and as a parent who's graduated 3 high schoolers, I know that the major challenge is getting everyone out of bed and conscious in time to get to school. I was fortunate enough to have my kids close to Ward, but if you need to get on a bus, it adds more complexity and time. The things that, one of the things that you mentioned, you're not in favor of flipping the elementary start times. That's going to mean more buses, right? And that's kind of the major challenge right now. But let me, if I could just say this about busing, it's not just a cost issue. We are having significant difficulties hiring bus drivers. And that's kind of a post-COVID thing that hasn't settled out yet, which may be, difficult to overcome in the short to medium term in terms of logistical issues, but I just throw that out there.
I wanted to suggest that I'm a little bit unclear as to why we need three bus waves. Why can we not? And again, I know I'm simplifying a very complex issue, but when you do the math, the number of students from kindergarten through 5th grade should roughly equal the number of students from 6th grade to 12th grade, roughly. Especially when you take into consideration the 12th graders who are driving themselves, not taking the buses. Therefore, why not group our middle schoolers and high schools on the same bus? Wait. And I know I'm oversimplifying it, but I'm just saying, like, I know. Okay. Wait a second. There are 7 other towns that we only have to look to for examples. Darien, Westport, Wilton, Greenwich, New Canaan, and Newtown, from what I last researched, have made the move to a later high school start time. Why are we not looking to those districts? And I believe some of them have grouped middle school and high school together, if I'm not mistaken.
Mr. Krasnoff, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I want to respond directly to that. Are much larger than Westport School District, first of all. You do need to provide buses for everyone, whether they need to drive to school or not. So you do need to understand, we can't just look at it that we just group them together.
But roughly equal, right?
Unfortunately, it's not. We still need to provide a bus for everybody. But listen, at the end of the day, I agree with you. I was one of those kids that struggled in Westport getting up, and I'm glad they moved to start time. It's not something I'm opposed to looking at. Just logistically, we have a lot of hurdles we gotta open. Bus driver shortages.
Right. But I'm urging you to look into it, right? I'm urging you, I know that I'm not tied to the outcome. If the outcome is that we as a district cannot do this, all I'm asking is for a full, thorough feasibility study to be conducted and for us not to just brush it off because it's going to be challenging to look at it or because we don't think it's possible. All I'm asking for, for the health, I mean, you just mentioned that the Board of Education is tasked for the health and well-being of our students and our staff. Well, this is a concern. This is a health and wellness and well-being concern, a very strong concern that the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have formally made statements that high school should not start before 8 a.m. And so if we are truly committed to the health and well-being of our student body and our staff, I say this is something that should be fully, thoroughly researched and studied.
Anyone else want to respond? Jennifer Maxim Kelly.
So, first of all, thank you for coming tonight. And again, I've a few times I've spoken with you about this. You know, the science is not debatable. So you used a phrase which, if you hear me using it in the future at any point, I won't be attributing it to you, but I'm crediting you right now. Is that I do like the idea of raising the query of the feasibility study. Because there are absolutely, and anyone who's paid attention to this issue for a long time knows there are significant obstacles to doing it. But when you take into account the lack of ambiguity about what would be in the best interest of students, then it does warrant an examination of that. I've been interested in looking at the high school schedule as a topic, period. And to me, it makes sense that these two issues could be, joined in terms of examining it. So again, just thank you for raising it tonight, and I'll be using that phrase. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining.
And I was told by a couple members of the board that I really needed to have a lot of parents in the room with me. Well, like I said, the study has been conducted. I'm happy to share the link with you. Overwhelming majority of parents are in favor, and if you want to revisit that and have a second study conducted, I urge you to do so. Thank you so much.
Next.
Read 117 Drive. I actually have two things that are completely unrelated, so I don't know if I can squeeze that into my 2 minutes. Whatever happens after.
Can you speak a little louder?
Yes. That's not a problem. Okay. The first topic was on, I watched the last meeting about Wade and the renovations and the whole vote on the FC to get opened my eyes to a lot of things, because admittedly I wasn't paying attention to it until that meeting. But I did want to ask, there was one part where there was, actually a lot of it was pretty aggressive dialogue, where you had, Ms. Jacobson had posed a question to the superintendent, well, what would you do in an emergency if we had to close Dwight or if we had to close Sherman? And we kind of put him on the spot and said, what would you do? What would you do? What would you do? And I would argue that as a board, I would like to hear more of what would this board do if you were faced with, I don't know, I can't lay the odds on it, but I say we have to assume it's at least 50-50, that the town comes back to you and says, you're gonna need to choose between air conditioning or Dwight. And then what does the board do? I think that's a more realistic conversation to have, or a hypothetical, if you will, than what are we gonna do if, where are we gonna put kids at Sacred Heart if Dwight has to close or Sherman has to close? So I was just wondering if there was a sense more from the board of like, there's a real chance that happens. Like you said, we just put in and we ask for what we ask for. We don't know what we're gonna get, and there's a good chance that that's a possibility. So I just wanted to get some thoughts on where you guys would stand if that would happen. So I don't know if do I stop on that one, or do I just throw the other one out there and then if, whatever you wanna do? Or I can come back, let somebody.
Yeah, you wanna come back?
We'll address that one.
Okay, fine.
Mr. Krasnoff?
Thank you for coming. First off, for clarity, the Dwight and Jennings is an AC project. So hopefully the public understands, neither of those schools do have AC. So when we're talking choosing AC over Dwight and Jennings, they're all part of the AC project. But that being said, again, that is one of the questions I believe we'll be discussing tomorrow. So feel free to tune in at 2 o'clock. Don't know if we'll have the answer by then, but I believe it's gonna be.
Sunali?
Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it. And I do think you're digging at other issues about just having the board think about their role overall holistically. And I think that's a very good question, you bringing that up, because ultimately it is the board's decision. And I appreciate you bringing that out because it sometimes does get, you know, very topic heavy and adversarial between specific board members, but it is true that the board should be thinking holistically about what the board's going to do. So I appreciate that and I appreciate you bringing that up. Thank you.
Mr. Peterson?
I'll just add briefly, hi, it's nice to see you. This board did vote to advance it to other town bodies, and that conversation is going to continue. I don't know that we need to have contingencies planned for every possibility, but I think that we're all of the mind that the conversation will be continuing. And that we have to be clear, if, right now, the Board of Finance is in possession of, has issued many questions to us, and we're starting that conversation about how to answer this. That's the next phase, right? A previous person said like that we're on a pause from redistricting, and I get what she was saying, but we're kind of never on pause, right? We need to make sure that things that are, now before other town bodies still hold our attention and that we're able to respond to them if things come up. So we want things to move forward, like that's what we're going to have to do.
Jacobson?
I actually appreciate that the Board of Finance actually raised this question, because to learn that we do not have a multiple year evacuation plan is concerning. Whether that be for Sherman or Dwight or any other school building. So I'm actually appreciative that this is going to be something, and I cannot sit here as a board member and responsibly say that without the input of our security professionals, teachers, superintendent, what that plan should initially look like. I'm sure that we would have some role in that, especially if there were budgetary implications. I'm sure parents would have a lot to say about that. So I'm not going to hypothesize on what that looks like. Other than to say, I hope that is not. I hope you're 50-50. It's not actually.
Obviously made that.
Right, so to me, a binary, right, I find the binary choice between what's best for our school facilities is not a lens from which I look.
Thank you for the questions. I kind of in a similar vein, I have a real hesitancy to do my work in hypotheticals. I make decisions, I vote by what is presented to our body, by our administration, our committees, our other board members. We debate, we talk. Sometimes it does get, like I said, use the word adversarial. I think debate is something that we kind of aren't appreciating as much right now as we need to. We are, a diverse community with lots of different opinions on what the best steps forward are. But at the end of the day, democracy is democracy, and we move on and make decisions as they are. So just as we engaged in that process, I wholeheartedly hope that all our other town bodies do. And I have no doubt that our administration, our entire board will be willing and able to answer questions as they come before us. But I do get really nervous. We've lived through decades in this community of a lot of hypotheticals, a lot of scenarios, a lot of, and I think we've all seen what that work can do in a continuum. And I think a lot of this community has pretty actively wanted us to engage in a path forward. So while I hope that that 50-50 is not where we're headed. I think we're all happy to engage in the work to get these projects moving forward.
Anyone else want to? You have a little more time.
Okay.
Go to your next
I'm
question.
completely unrelated, but I was curious about your thoughts on the presentation that was given on the flex time. And I know there was a lot of talk about that. And as someone who sat on the board when they were doing that, I also shared the sentiment of it kind of felt a little bit like a bait and switch and what it was advertised as, whatever. The point that I wanted to make was that it was alarming to me to see in total the number of minutes for the whole year that were dedicated to the flex period. And I think it was like, I don't have it in front of me and I'm sorry I didn't print it out. It was like 5,900. I rounded up to 6,000 minutes, 100 hours for the school year. And we can talk all we want about, oh, but there's less transition time. That's 4 minutes here. And I felt like when I saw it in that way, like 100 hours. And I was just wondering, and I know it's new and there was talk about how it's evolving and it's changing. And I know it's going to morph into, it might look different in 2 years than it looks now. But I was just wondering if there was a sense of what the tolerance is for and how do we measure success of something that's eating up to what I would argue is a huge chunk of instructional time. And so I understand maybe measuring the success of the people who needed intervention and how they're doing, but really of the people who are not getting those interventions and they're falling behind or stagnating and I just watched that part of the meeting and I just didn't feel good about it. And I just didn't know if anyone had an idea of what success looks like or what measure looks like, or is it like a 10-year runway of like, okay, we gave it a shot for 10 years, or is it like 5 years? I don't know. I just wanted a better sense of like, how long does this go on? Like that.
Hi, I had a very similar reaction. I was not a member of the body, but I was a member of the audience when the flex period was proposed, and I would agree, and I think I said it pretty plainly, that I thought that it wasn't living up to the standards as it was presented. But moving forward, I think it's something, Ms. Maxon Kennelly's point, I think as we're getting a chance to look at schedules for elementary, middle, and high school, I think that that's good work. I think, to your point, I would love to see the initial scope of what that period was to be. You know, it's called flex, but I think I said it seemed really rigid to me in terms of what that could hit for all of our kids. And while we were given kind of a long list of what was happening, we were told that really 2 things were happening. Right. So looking forward, I think I can only speak for myself. I've expressed pretty loudly that I would like to see some exploration of the feasibility of what we can expand during that time frame for all students and how it can be utilized. I think you and I have agreed for many, many years about movement at our middle schools. I think there's been conversations about, and I think the administration has a very good list of things that they're trying to do there in that time frame. So I want to be mindful of their input. And I think listening to staff, hearing staff, collaborating with staff is our best path forwards. But I had very similar.
Right. Well, I felt like the 30 minutes of the IXL and I was like, well, then are we expecting math scores to be like off the charts in the next 3 years? Like, I don't know. Like, I just didn't know what
the measurable
measurables or metrics that we were really holding.
I'm looking towards those.
Yeah. I just wanted to throw that out.
And that we will be getting the student data achievement report on November 12th.
Gotcha. Right, that is probably not enough time. I know that. It's new and it's not enough time, but I do that. Oh, sorry.
I can say that I do value it a time in the day, especially for our middle school students. I agree with the flex not being flex and its theory. Beginning to have some agency over what I need, so to speak, and how I envision that to be. So that time when you have to go to the math teacher because you didn't understand that math question, or you want to run to the library to return your book or check out something new, or that time that you need to make a band up lesson up. Whatever it may, I think that there is some value to some amount of time because it used to be during homeroom, right? Like you went to homeroom and there was like 20, 30 minutes and you could run around and do these different things that what I need, right? I do agree. I think that it should be more flexible in terms of that for students that are not redirect. At the same time, being mindful of the fact of we need to provide the time for the students who are receiving the services that they need to be successful. in the tier 2 and 2, 3 intervention space, that is fit into. So the hard dance, I totally get it, but, not thrilled with that explanation myself. So I hope it's something that we can think about. It did sound like one of the complicating factors is, as you well know, as a former member, a lot of our staff is broken up across buildings. So it's a 0.20 here, and then they go over here for 0.2, and then they go over there for 0.2. Then having just the supervision in place to be like, oh, here's your menu, would be an FTE, right? In budget, in order to afford the menu. So unless something went away, obviously. Or as I believe it was the principal of Wood said, or we would need parents to step up and be the volunteers to supervise these types of activities. So definitely a good conversation to be had for sure.
Thank you very much. Who would like to come up next?
My name is Greg Bosch. I live at 470 Jackman. I want to begin by thanking the board and FairTV and our moderator for this opportunity. Thank you, Ms. Ruggiero, for being here and moderating this evening. I really appreciate our Board of Finance member being here tonight. And I hope that you'll report back to your board on all the important topics here that were raised this evening. I didn't know that we had playgrounds that aren't ADA compliant. I would venture to guess that most people in town don't, and that might include some of the Board of Finance members. So also shout out to the students that were here tonight. I'm here to talk about dyslexia. Veteran members of this board might recall that 2 years ago, I came to a town hall event to discuss Connecticut's right to read legislation. Ms. Kelly, you and I had a wonderful conversation at that meeting. I was convinced at that time that it was a change in curriculum that my child needed in order to be able to succeed in the classroom. And in some ways I was right. And in others, there was more. So for those listening at home that have a child that is struggling to read like mine, I hope that you'll lean into this part of the conversation. And I want you to know that it's with my child's permission that I'm here to talk about this topic tonight. And so if the board has any questions for me, I'm also happy to provide a parent's perspective. My thesis is that our school system is under-identifying children with dyslexia, and that there are too many barriers for dyslexic students to access the resources they need in order to reach their full potential. I'm not here to cast blame. I want to be very clear about that. Some of the teachers that my child has worked with are fantastic. I want to work together to make things better. And so I'm here tonight to ask if you agree with the thesis as I've stated it, and if so, what initiatives the board will work on this year to correct under-identification of dyslexic students in order to get them the help that they need. Or if you disagree, I'll respect that. And I would like you to talk about the data and reports and facts and figures that you rely on in your opinion that Fairfield is identifying all dyslexic students in order to ensure that they receive the support that they require. So I'll pause there. I have a bank of questions, but I really welcome your thoughts.
For Max.
Yeah, I don't know one way or the other. I'm neither refuting your thesis nor endorsing it because I genuinely don't know. I think that's very much an area where we trust what staff who test for that, who measure it, who are in the classroom with students and making recommendations for testing, but whatever gets reported to us in terms of that is a data point. So I can't refute your thesis because I'm happy to, I have no problem raising that when we get our, our data point is that how do we appear to be doing with this as an identifiable point. Obviously we've taken many steps to address severe reading issues, with the Early Literacy Academy. And just as importantly from the Early Literacy Academy is the filtering out of that training increasingly to more and more staff members. So that if you're not partaking of the Early Literacy Academy, you're still having contact with staff members who are able to provide that measure of support. This is a really long answer to what was actually a very simple question. But, you know, I certainly have no problem raising that at our data presentation and asking that.
Maybe simple question, obviously a complicated topic. I'm not sure either. Although my gut tells me, because as I lean into this as a parent and I talk to pediatricians and other experts and educational advocates, even the Yale Dyslexic Center believes the prevalence rate of dyslexia in general population is 20%. In 2021, there's a document where the Board of Ed was asking questions about the ELA. It typically is the case around finances too. Board member, their question, staff member who answers it. And Mr. Mancusi writes, this is again 2021, talking about the ELA, 6% of the IEPs in Fairfield cite SLD dyslexia as the primary disability. But that doesn't really answer the question of how many total IEPs exist in the district. So I was playing with some data today that is offered by the state, and this is also not like a direct answer to the question, but it was talking about accommodations on state testing and how many at each school building receive accommodation. So maybe it's like a litmus test, right? It's certainly not specific to dyslexia, but dyslexia would cause an IEP, therefore likely accommodation on a state exam. At Dwight, 10% of students have a IEP that gives them accommodations. At North Stratfield, only 6%. That's based upon last year's data and then normalizing it based upon built-in population. Sorry, long answer to your long answer.
Guys, no?
Thank you for coming and bringing this up. It's actually perfect timing. I sit on a board of CES, which is a local educational service that we work with. They are seeing spikes in dyslexia and misidentification of dyslexia. Gentleman there who runs a lot of their education program named Luke is actually currently working with a group to work on dyslexia and come report to a lot of the Fairfield County schools what they found and different ways to look and find dyslexia earlier. According to him, it is a major problem. It's not necessarily just a Fairfield problem. It's a nationwide problem. There's just issues identifying it until people are much older. So if you want, feel free to email me or reach out. I can try to get you in touch with Luke, maybe. Yeah.
I appreciate that. I met with a woman by the name of Ms. Ross out of Norwalk. She runs an organization called Smart Kids with LD, learning disabilities. And she said to me that they believe that when it comes to gender, boys are more likely to be identified with dyslexia than girls. That what kind of can trip the identification is at times a behavioral issue in the classroom. And so, I don't know, I guess shout out to the girls, like being proper and polite and sitting in class and doing their thing means that they might not get pulled into that umbrella. And this is the quote, child find process that the state asks us to run, right? It is our duty to identify them.
Lynn?
Thank you for discussing the topic. It's one I'm pretty familiar with personally, for myself and family members. You're absolutely right about the late-term diagnosis, similar to the spikes you see with ADHD diagnosis on the gender gap. Dyslexia follows very, very, very closely. I think a piece of that puzzle, and this is, like I said, to Ms. Maxim Kennelly's point, I think we need to look at the data at our level, but just a little personal insight. A lot of our young students that are coming in carry a developmental delay diagnosis for quite a stretch of time until identifiers are put in and testing. So to your point, I am interested in where we're seeing. What age are we seeing dyslexia most? First grade, third grade, seventh grade? Are we seeing first grade in boys, But so like, I think for us, the tall trees in our data are where we kind of inform our work. So I think we're incredibly lucky for the work that's done by former boards to get the ELA running. The staff there is top notch. And I am very confident that the more we can spread that PD throughout the district, hopefully we'll see that work continue, not just at, like you said, at McKinley, but at North Stratfield and Dwight and Sherman and on down the list, so that we can make sure this is a continuum across the district and not contagious to ELA.
I've thought about some data that I would love to see, and if you don't take this down, we can go back to the videotape. But how long students are in our district before they're identified with dyslexia? So the 9th grader that shows up for the first time and is pulled in, that's obviously a win, right? But certainly has only been in the district for 1 year, compared to the 5th grader who's been in the system for 5 years and only now just identified. I think a breakdown by numbers across school buildings would be helpful. I think CLCs, they might complicate some of that work, but I would bet that there's a way to kind of normalize the data in that respect. Should we expect a normal distribution of dyslexic students across the district? I honestly don't know. Certain populations may present differently, but it would be interested to see that across all 11 buildings. And as well as a report that breaks down numbers by gender to the extent that that might bear out in the data.
Well, thank you very much.
Just one final comment?
Yes, of
There's only one other final comment about that, which obviously, unfortunately, it is going to be too soon for us to know. But I have a sincere hope that in terms of the identifying of dyslexia, that moving to write to read and away from the cueing method is going to yield valuable insights much more quickly. Because I think that with how we had been approaching reading versus what we have moved to now, I think there's a whole host of issues that shielded. And I think, again, so you're hoping we have the right tools now and our staff is now sufficiently trained. I think things are going to be unearthed so much more quickly. And again, this is pure hope. I can't speak that it will do that, but I would sincerely hope that this would unearth things so much more quickly through this phonics-based approach.
If I could tack on one last report, it would be the number of re-enrollments in SRBI as opposed to identification than an IEP.
Thank you very much, Greg. Who would like to come down next?
My name is Megan McHale. I live at 188 Range Road. I am the co-president of the PTA at Dwight, and one of the things that we've done this year is have a really robust Instagram account. And today, our social media person asked if our community had any questions that they wanted us to ask on their behalf. And there was one that interested me personally also, so I thought I would share it with you and also tack on my thoughts. The person asked for your POV, that's like internet for point of view, on mental health, on the current mental health crisis, and a curriculum that doesn't allow for play or breaks, which I think ties nicely into my personal concern, which is the proliferation.
Colony pizza, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Everyone's on their cell phone again. It defeats the purpose of what we're doing it for, right? Or if you're on the weekends and there are no rules at home. Am I for kind of a ban? I'm not really sure, but I know when my kid entered middle school, she didn't have $1,000 to buy a cell phone, right? It's the responsibility of parents too. But I think that's a huge thing that takes a part of it, because that's what I see. Hear all these kids, you got it banned in Manhattan or whatever, but then on the weekends, it's a free for all. So it kind of defeats the purpose of what we're doing.
I think that's true. Is it? Okay. I think that's true, and definitely parents have a role to play at home, absolutely. But those 7 hours when our kids are at school, it's kind of sacred time. And even if they, let's say, leave their phone in their locker during the class period or on one of those hanging bags, it's like a constant presence kind of, and then they're rushing to their locker for the few minutes in between, checking, make sure that see if they got any new snaps. And we know from experience that kids are using their phones during this meeting. So just think a bell to bell is a little bit more.
Would you
We
be,
all grew up without having cell phones. I think everyone, people did along with me. And we managed even in emergencies, so.
Ms. Flynn?
Thank you for breaching the topic. As a middle school and an elementary parent, it's something that I'm catty-cornering in my own house. And I will tell you, one of the things that I've said to, I think everyone I've spoken to about is that my perspective has changed a lot from, you know, my current oldest to I'm doing things differently. So I think a lot of this work too is how we talk about it and communicate it. And I really want to commend our PTAs and the leadership they've taken and not, you know, coming out being like judgmental, but really giving parents a venue to talk about this. In terms of the bell to bell, I agree with you that enforcement is really important. I will say that at our open house, our administrator told us that the vast majority of the time when a parent is caught, a child is caught checking a cell phone, especially at the middle school, it's a parent.
Oh, yeah.
So also, I would really reinforce Mr. Lee's point that I get it, that carpool's gonna change. And I get it that, you know, Susie Jane may be going to Timmy's house and you're going to work. But I think a lot of the reasons why our kids have devices in their hands so much is because all of us and moving in 8 million pieces. So while I appreciate, and I want to talk about the play and all that as well, but I think it really is going to be a partnership between our schools, our home, how we look at technology, how we use technology. So I think it's a really holistic conversation. Get to play. We did introduce play set short for kindergarten. You know, I think play is vitally important, and I think the more that we can incorporate it, I would go further than 5th grade. I think all the way up through middle school is really, really important. It's something that I'm always looking for a moment of time to fit it in where we can. So when I saw flex, it's like some flexibility for movement. So I'll absolutely speak to that whenever I get a chance.
Ms. Maxim Kelly?
Yeah, I'm a much more unambiguous answer. I am 100% for it. Period. Parents, you got to figure it out. It's absolutely sacred time. Shut it down. And all of the ways that and there are many absolutely instruction-based, valid uses of the phone during school hours. Oh, well. The moment you open the door, they will drive. I'm a high school teacher. There's Mack truck doesn't begin to cover the imagery of what they will ram through that hole if you open it for exceptions. So I'm an easy one on that.
That's not.
I'm all for movement breaks. I think they're really important. Expressed a few times, I think some of our periods are a little longer. I would like to see, and hopefully the kids are moving. I am being told they are, but I think movement's amazing. It helps the brain flow. It helps kids be more protected. In terms of the cell phone, I'm on the fence. I do think a lot of it is the parents' responsibility. I also made it pretty clear my kids are not getting social media or the phone. Which is fine. And I've let them know that since they're in 1st grade. I ask, but still gonna get it. School is sacred. So I think there's a fine line on that. But I know parents feel more comfortable. Especially if they're doing extracurricular activities or going to friends' houses, school, they want to know where they are. I kind of get that piece of it. So. Thank you for coming.
About just the person who asked about the mental health crisis on our Instagram account. Does anyone have do you feel a sense that there is a mental health? So how do you feel that the board can address it?
Mr. Lee?
I don't think it's just a Fairfield issue, right? You can heard on the news or even anything else. I think there is definitely a mental health crisis that needs to be addressed. My opinion is the school is there to assist, right? They're there to help, and you hope that they can also recognize there's a problem. And I feel, yeah, maybe it's not 100%, but I feel once they recognize there is a situation with the child, I think the school does its due diligence to follow through with that child, right? To make sure they get the proper help, make sure they help the parents the right direction and things. And I think it's a difficult and troubled subject, if you want to call it that, because as a parent, I can only imagine when you're doing that, you have limited resources, whatever the case may be. And it's obviously stressful for everyone around, but I think the school system, when they recognize something, they're not. I just speaking from my own opinion, that they job and they follow through on that, so.
Jacobson?
We're not gonna solve this in the 10-minute conversation here. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. As I was like telling everyone else, we're not gonna solve this in a 10-minute conversation, right? I think that there's been for many, many years, listening to our staff and saying what they're seeing in our schools and what they need for us to provide to them, and therefore the other town boards as well, right? So we have for years been adding support staff, we've been adding more social workers, we've been adding more psychologists, there's been more evaluations, there has been we added a mental health and student support position. So we do somewhat rely on our professionals to say what are the right tools that they need to support our students, and also, to be quite frank, for our staff as well. Their classrooms have become more challenging. We haven't lowered class sizes yet, right? So we need to be able to make sure that we have those supports in place for them as well, so that they can do their best job in teaching your kids, right? It's a very complicated, and I absolutely will acknowledge that. So, and it's also outside of school though too, as well. A lot of this is in and out and requires our partnerships, which is why, we do at subgroup population data, which is why we do have school climate survey, which is why we do our student surveys on topics of mental health, substance misuse, well-being, everything else. I think we need to hear from our kids, especially those who are older, and what their experiences are. So this is a complex, systemic matter that we all need to partner on together. But as a board, in our role, is to acknowledge what all kids may be needing, and to hear from our staff and family and students and everyone else, and what can we do to help support that, and then make those decisions as best that we can. I'm sure we'd all love to have a lot more, but yes, absolutely. It's a conversation that just needs to come up regularly. Thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Chase Dunlap from 201 Brookline Terrace, Fairfield, Connecticut. Children go to Stratfield Elementary. I'm also the PTA board rep. PTA at Stratfield. One of the questions that we have is looking at school rankings, elementary school rankings in Fairfield. Our highest ranking elementary school, according to Niche, understand that school rankings are school rankings. However, they are a measure that communities look at. They're a measure that people consider when moving into our district, where to move in. Our highest ranking elementary school, according to Niche, is number 25. In my children's school, Stratfield Elementary is ranked number 95. So one of my questions is, what is the board's plan to understand the root causes of this great discrepancy in our elementary schools? Say that 95 isn't even the lowest. Performing school, according to Niche, is number 144. That's 119 different schools between our top performing elementary school in Fairfield, our lowest performing elementary school, according to an outside source that takes into consideration their metrics. And then on top of that, what steps is the board planning, commit to at this point to ensure that one family is not getting the 25th best elementary education, while another family is getting the 95th, 144th. Stop with those, and then I can.
It's Maxim.
Yeah, I started to raise those questions when we got our last data presentation. And I will admit Stratfield's number absolutely jumped out at me. There were other discrepancies, and some of them for positive reasons. To respond to your second point first, the one thing that we go to pains to do is to make sure that if you transfer within district, you are getting the same curriculum. And that's why we, invest money in, and again, there are approximate pacing guides, so you should even be approximately hitting the same point of that curriculum, which we mandate, and that is supposed to be addressed in all grades, in all schools, in all subjects. But that said, to me, the more interesting way to look at those numbers, because what we do know in educational research is, I might be off on the percentage, but 75 to 80% of educational results are entirely predicted by socioeconomic background. We know that. It is not a matter of one school is necessarily doing something better than another school. It was really predicted by that. So to me, what's more of interest is when the results don't seem to dovetail with the socioeconomic background of the school. That to me is the red flag that something is going on. That while we as a board, we're supposed to be staying at the district level. We don't get down to, okay, we want a report right now on what's going on at Osborne Hill. We don't, unless a facility issue, yes, but not with something like educational performance or whatever. We don't do that for obvious reasons, I think. But that was the question that I was raising last November, and which again, in the report that Mrs. Jacobson mentioned that we're going to be getting in November, I would be looking to have seen that there have been steps of improvement made there, because there was definitely a discrepancy. And again, it wasn't just with Stratfield. There were a few other schools that were really had outliers. And these school improvement plans that I think Mrs. Flynn referenced before are very much meant to, the idea of the school improvement plan, it's supposed to be targeted on just that school community. And I would hope to see measurable improvement. And lacking that, there would be an again, not that it would be at the board level. We're not pulling principals up before us. We can ask hard questions of the superintendent and then trust to see that there's going to be, allocation of staff, allocation of time, allocation of PD, whatever it is that is resulting in a discrepancy that was not anticipated.
Thank you for comment. As someone who people mention niche often too, because I am a real estate agent. A lot of times I show them what the actual ranking includes. For example, food is one of them. Obviously, we all want good food in our schools, but if food is given a C+ or a B-, it's going to hurt your overall ranking. That's just one example, but there's many like that within it. Our goal here as a board is to, as everyone said, try to get the same education in every school. We see that it's not happening. Obviously, that's what raises more flags, whether it's rankings or not. Our job is to make sure every student's getting proper and similar education. And I believe, I can't speak for everyone, but we're all going to continue to do that. Whether the rankings say it or not, we're going to continue to try to make sure every student in Fairfield.
If I may, some of the data that is internal and specific to schools, and I would encourage the board to look at domain identities and student achievement in literacy and mathematics, because the evidence shows that students in Fairfield are not getting the same education. I would also ask the board to consider, is it appropriate for every student in Fairfield at every school to be receiving same exact curriculum and the same exact pacing? Are there schools that have student populations and student needs that would require a different pacing? We've done some root cause analysis and really looked at our school populations and looked at providing more personalized learning plans, allowing some school-centered approaches to meeting those needs. I don't come with the answers, but I think what I'm trying to highlight is the methods and the ways that we've approached this have impacted students, and there is discrepancy in them. It's not the food. I just use niche as a way to highlight, and parents talk to me and say, why are we 95th and they're 25th? Because that's where they get that information. They're not looking at SIP, they're not looking at student.
Thank you. And I agree. And I think to the similar comments I gave about, our dyslexia identification, from our level, to Ms. Max and Kennelly's point, we're really at top level, but our administration, I would hope, and that's part of what we're gonna do in November, they're looking at that data. They're looking for their tall trees. Because to your point, not every school is going to have the same issues. So I think the SIPs are very important at this granular level to try and realign that. And for us to look at the trend lines, you know, is this a blip? Is it from everything? You know, we just came through, and I think this is hard too. We just came through like the largest disruption to public education in the history of this country. Like, and that sentence is long, but it's accurate. So things like attendance, you know, while we have kind of acclimated to that new baseline, that's still something that's ongoing, you know? I think there's, to your point, we're gonna continue to look at it. I think that's just the work of education, is looking at, you know, what is the data that we're seeing and how does that inform the work that we're doing? We just saw it with the right to read legislation. Where is the data you're seeing? How does it inform what you're doing, and how do we move forward with that? So I think, like I said, I don't like playing in hypotheticals. I like looking at what's in front of us. And that's what I'm hoping, and we hold our superintendent accountable to do for each of our school administrators at each building.
Ms. Jacobs?
So if you haven't, I would suggest throwing away the niche and going to EdSite and using official State Department of Ed subgroup population by building. I don't have what you have in front of you to know what the decimal or variance in percentages are of what you're talking about, because I don't read that stuff, I'll be honest. But I would say that besides the school improvement plans that are very targeted by subgroup population, which I'm happy to see the administration is doing that on a regular basis. Again, as Mrs. Maxey Kennelly, we don't typically get into that level, but we do have our district improvement plan, which when we set that, and for some of the members that are currently on the board, we're pretty adamant about setting subgroup population data. For older kids, making sure we're looking at who's enrolling in those higher level courses and who's not, and why that might be, APs or honors. We set a very bold goal that 100%, which I don't know, you know, I'm eager to see where we are, of all second grade students will be on reading level. So we have set some very high expectations. And of course, you know, it's not easy to achieve. Especially coming out of a pandemic, but I hear you, and I might take issue with the language around that some students are getting whatever you might have said, 25 education, and some are getting a 195. I'm not sure that that's actually, look at it. The outcomes might be different, right? In terms of where the performance of the building may be. And that is something that we obviously are addressing. So I'm not sure we could say that schools are getting a different education provided to them. So that's my thoughts, and I'm sorry about my thoughts.
No, and I'm student success coordinator, function and assessment. I've done this work, I'm familiar with it. I only brought niche in because I know that members, there are people that has. When we do look at some of the indicators, it still does show us that there are discrepancies. So my follow-up would be then, how is the board going to commit to support in achieving their set? Is the budget season programming, allocating additional funding resources to schools to help them to achieve this tip, specifically in areas where they may not be reaching these achievement goals, to make sure that they.
I see.
Mr. Kasnoff?
May I ask a question back? Is there anything you think we're not doing? Since I've been on the board, I feel like we've been trying our best too.
No, I haven't done the root cause analysis, and I haven't been able to get into a classroom and,
just to give you some
to
examples.
Riverfield or to Sherman or to Stratfield or North Stratfield to see what the methods of instruction look like from school to school, to see what the impact of class sizes is from school to school. So I don't have those answers, but I think that that's something that is a really interesting question for all of us to.
I'll give an example. we had the ELA presented to us. And as a board, we had some tweaks that we wanted to see to make it better. These are the kind of things we, from our level, it's very hard for each of us to go into each school and analyze it. That's not our purview. However, you know, we're gonna see the improvement plans. We're gonna see where schools need help. Do actually fund certain schools more than others due to certain programs. I'm just wondering if there's anything you think we're not doing is more.
I mean, we can look at whether it's, you know, dyslexia screeners that, you know, come in at first grade. We know there's hereditary linkage and we have siblings that get diagnosed and it takes 3 years to get. I mean, that's one area. But I think that trying to understand where one school may have access opportunity funding are doing great things, maybe some areas with some having some deficit areas. It is through staffing. Stratfield Elementary School went through a number of social workers, school psychologists, and support staff, and that's probably 4 years. So that has impacted us. The sharing support staff, social workers between schools, rather than having dedicated professionals to each. So budgetary issues, those are within your purview. Those impact achievement. I don't know, it's upon niche, if any of the 25th best school has a dedicated social worker. It's been there for 5, 10, 15 years. 144th best school niche has had a social worker share and turned over the last 10 years. I don't know that.
Staffing decisions are.
That's funding FTE and making sure that is.
Well, that's our time mark, so I have something, if you, I don't know if you want to wait, if you have more time at the end to come back up. I just want to give other people a chance to talk. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So my name is Ellie Fategi. I am the PTA Council President. My address 98 Flora Boulevard. I'm also a parent of two Hill Elementary School children. So the reason I'm here today is to talk about what we're doing from our standpoint. We created the Digital Wellness Committee in response to under protection of children. The last two PTA council meetings, this has been a major topic of discussion. And in collaboration with the superintendent, we identified the need for a two-pronged approach. One, we have an awareness campaign for parents and children around the dangers of social media and gaming and just everything going on in the digital world that parents are just not aware of. But also the second prong is policies in schools. So in response, part of our awareness campaign, and you guys all received an email from me with all of our events that we have coming up. We actually have a sold out event. We're at Max at the library for screening of Screenagers, the elementary age version, and with Mr. Tassani in attendance as well. But we also have several other events scheduled for parents and children. So essentially, we identified that there's a need to balance the benefits of technology with the risks associated with it from a policy standpoint. There's no policy currently in place around the appropriate use of technology, including early and excessive use of Chromebooks, and I'm specifically talking about early use and excessive use in schools, but also students using cell phones excessively and inappropriately in schools in general. So my ask here today is to address that second prong. We're addressing the first prong of the awareness campaign, the second prong of the policies.
Ms. Maxim.
Nice timing. So we had policy yesterday, and due to a separate reason, our student internet use, which is the only thing we have that deals with what was formerly called personal electronic devices and is now being changed to student privately owned it's the name, the terminology is changing. And so that was being brought before us, and we had a lengthy discussion, a far-ranging discussion. And ultimately what we did at that point, just with that policy, was we're looking into 4,000, 5,000, and 6,000 series of our policy. 4,000 is how we direct policy to staff. 5,000 are the policy directed to student. 6,000 is the policy directed to instruction. And what we charged Mr. Taddy with doing is to take our current policy, which is old, and first of all, let's fine tune it to what we are doing in each of those three realms. But more importantly, then we started to have the very tip of the iceberg discussion of just cell phones. And the one thing that I said, look, we need to work with staff on these three policies. We'll work on language, we'll make suggestions, we'll give feedback. But the topic of what do we want to have as new policy, and Mrs. Jacobs, unfortunately, not only right now is setting the agenda, she also serves on policy. So it was a very productive conversation of, I don't think that's something that three policy members should be deciding. What you're talking about, and we've heard other parents mention today, that is a massive topic that will involve a commitment in terms of staff, in terms of directives, et cetera. And so that before three policy members in a small superintendent's conference room start dictating the direction of the board, is that we were requesting that it be a full board conversation. I'm not sure yet about timing or whatever, because we, again, we're still working on some of the foundational work. But having it as a new policy, having it in policy, current, to reflect what will be the new direction of the board, is going to be something that comes up this year. I know that I personally, at our next meeting, when we start talking about budget drivers, I'm going to be interested in asking for information on the Yonder pouches, certainly for the high school. And I do think also that while that's policy, there's plenty of rules and regulations that are going on at the high school and middle school level, which aren't captured in policy, but which are rules governing our children's behavior nevertheless. Those are arrived at level wide, but I don't know what strength those have behind them. Enforceability is always a challenge, which we know, but looking to make this be a, in front of us conversation, will be happening this year. I'm confident saying that it will be a this year discussion.
To Ms. Maxon Kennelly's point, a piece of that puzzle looking forward that I'm interested in exploring, and definitely will be a topic that I'm asking about, is the usage of the Chromebooks. And I don't like use almost like an audit of how much time, especially our 3rd through 5th graders are currently on. I think, that's that capital investment we're really almost a decade-ish about. I think it's time for kind of a look at how it's going, how our staff like it, how it's used. Is it used consistently across buildings? I know for myself as a board member, I've heard, some schools use it for homework, some don't. Some are sending it home, some are not. Like I'd like to hear the methodology behind that from a building level through our superintendent, and continue those conversations for our policy committee in terms of, I fully agree with Ms. Maxon Kennelly. These are discussions for the whole board, because I think there's a lot of things to ask. I think a lot of our policy was created before much of this technology was. So the reality is, I don't think it's putting it back in a bottle, but I think it's looking if it's working well for us, and where it is, where it isn't, and where we may need to pivot. Because just like any new initiative, you're not gonna stay in the same lane if it's not giving you the desired outcome you wanted.
Oh, yes, of course.
And the other thing that I just want to stress is it's not that we're anti-technology. There is an appropriate use of technology for education. We know that. But like any new technology, we just need to kind of put this influence on our kids. Give it a booster seat, like something, they're not ready for what's in the digital world. And as I've peeled back the layers, I'm terrified. So I'm just asking for you guys to help us put those seeds on our kids.
Jacobson, did you have something to add?
Just had a clarifying question. Can you share with me, I don't want to assume that I understand your context of excessive Chromebook use.
So
the thing is, I have a second grader, she's gonna be third grade next year, like she's still learning how to write. And I'm really worried about when she gets that Chromebook, that the writing is going to go out the door because she's gonna become an expert typer. And I see this in my fifth grader right now. The excessive Chromebook use, I think I'm talking about, autocorrect is, he doesn't need to learn to spell because of autocorrect, and his spelling is atrocious. His handwriting is horrible. I hope my husband's not listening. But like, I feel like if we can delay the Chromebooks, get them to a point where they have dexterity, where they can spell, where they can write for their typing, I think that's kind of what I'm talking about.
I can just follow up one comment on here, just taking us all back maybe before your time and when the one-to-one Chromebook initiative rolled out, there was extensive questions about, are we limiting the screen time? Is there gonna be limits? How are you gonna follow this? Like that kind of never followed up on. But what we were told is that because the state moved to an online state mastery exam, starting in third grade, that it would be educational malpractice to not give kids Chromebooks so that they could practice for the Smarter Balance assessment. Point blank. Because the state moved from a paper-based assessment to a computer-based assessment, where they had to know by spring of third grade how to draw, how to highlight, how to type, how to navigate, how to be able to access resources within that exam. So understanding some of the like how we got here pieces of this is that bottom line, it's cheaper to give tests on computer than it is on paper.
Snuff.
Thank you for coming and bringing this up. I agree with a lot of things the other board members said. I do speak from a little bit different perspective. I think some of it is teacher themselves. It's not really us teachers do what. And to what another board member said, we need to know if all the teachers are kind of following similar guidelines. I think some teachers are using it one way, other teachers are using it another way. I can tell you from my experience, and I hate to speak about how my family does it, but homework is assigned on the Chromebook. My son writes, 4 different handwritten versions before he even starts typing it up. And it may be spelled right, it may be misspelled, but the computer comes later. So again, that's just my experience with the teacher that has currently. But hopefully we can get an idea of how, if all teachers are using them similar, or if some teachers are giving it and just not giving direction. There should be some direction, I feel, especially with the elementary school.
You want to do a quick follow-up or pass time?
Yeah, just real quick, I guess I'm in the minority of this. My daughter actually has some physical constraints in elementary school. She actually learned better and when she got her Chromebook, also viewing stuff, her eyesight wasn't as well. So I'm definitely in that minority, but like, I see what you're saying. There has to be some limitation. But some kids actually may do a lot better with that Chromebook, especially with typing and things like, she's still the worst handwriting, still the worst typer in the world. And she's a one-finger typist. But she excelled better and she wasn't as frustrated when it came to writing and reading and things like that. So it kind of changed her perspective, just another look on it.
Can I do like a 30-second follow-up?
Yes.
Just because we're also in the middle of revising our digital library media curriculum, which is also a huge piece of this work. I think the last time it was written, there wasn't like a digital citizen didn't exist. So these terms that our kids are kind of living in, this world that they're living in, I'm really encouraged just in the presentation that we got that, our professionals know the world that they're working in every day in our libraries and our classrooms to support our children on this technology. So I'm actually really optimistic at what they come to us. And I'm really hopeful that the PTA Council and all of our parents are engaged in that work because it's the perfect time to get engaged.
Yeah. Thank you, Alex.
Good evening. My name is Elaine Thomas Davis, 206 Farmington Avenue. I'm the Board of Education representative for Fairfield Woods Middle School, but I'm speaking tonight as a grandparent guardian of my 7th grade granddaughter. I'm speaking to the world language curriculum revisions. I would like to emphasize the importance of authentic text, grammar use and context, not explicit grammar, and survival skills, that is communication in real life situations. On October 29th, 7 p.m., the Connecticut Council of World Language Teachers, in collaboration with the State Department of Education, will hold a Zoom meeting to roll out the new Connecticut State World Language Standards. And I hope you'll all be paying attention to this and following this as we go about the revision of our world language curriculum. Thank you.
Would like to respond?
Anybody have any responses or just wanted to make a comment?
Good to know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Laura Veneman, 106 Blue Ridge Road. First, with a compliment, I have seen firsthand the change in the reading curriculum. I have a kindergartner and a third grader. My third grader experienced the horrible cueing method and only just learned how to read last year. And my kindergarten, under the new Into Reading curriculum, just came home today reading her first paragraph. Very proud. So just wanted to thank you guys for that wonderful progress. But the reason I wanted to come up today was in regards to a challenge that I see within our kindergarten wing at McKinley specifically. So I wasn't allowed in the school when my third grader was in kindergarten thanks to COVID. And only just now that I have a kindergartner there and I'm able to go into the school, I am quite surprised to see that there are no interior doors in the kindergarten wing of the school. My daughter's classroom has 2 open doors and a large cutout window in the hallway, as do all of the kindergarten classrooms that exist at McKinley. So during lockdown drills, it's up to a staff member to go and close 2 very large and honestly slow closing doors. While I pray that our school will never be presented in a situation where it will actually be needed, it is very unsettling, and it has been brought to many parents' attentions to see that our most vulnerable students have a lockdown drill that I think is less than ideal. I would like to invite the board to come see one of these lockdown drills in action and would appreciate your honest review if this is truly acceptable by the district standards. I know the district has a lot of competing priorities right now, but to ease parents' mind, this is a plan that I hope that we can put in place.
Anybody? Yes, Madam.
I think on matters like that, we are very much guided by the professionals. You know, and first of all, I don't think they would allow any of us in the building for a lockdown, and I've been through enough of them that I wouldn't need to go. But I do know the issue of which you speak because I've been to McKinley, so I've seen the facility issue that you reference. And I can only say I know we'll be having some kind of security update, at some point. That's a regular part of our board work, but I think we would have to be attuned to, if a recommendation came to us, we would act on it. If the professionals in the realm of security feel that the area can be sufficiently secured, that would be also information for us to work with. So that's not going to satisfy you because I can't give anything more immediate than that, but I know that we take very seriously the recommendations of professionals.
Mr. Krasnoff?
During our tour, I saw similar to what you're describing. A lot of us did ask that question. Can't go into specific details because it's a security thing. However, I can tell you I felt a lot better from the answer I was given as to what does transpire during any of those situations. All we can do is really trust the professionals that are advising us. We can ask questions to them too, see if there's anything we could do to make it better, like Ms. Maxinelli said. But I felt pretty good with the answer I was given at the time.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Anyone else want to come speak? No? All righty then. I think that the meeting is concluded.
Thanks.
I guess I don't need to make a motion, so.
Just turn it back over.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I just want to say thank you so much. You were a bright light and we appreciate you so much. Thank you.
My pleasure. Happy to have been asked and participate.
Just thank you to everyone who came, to our gracious host this evening and being our moderator. It's better than the last time we tried this, and I hope that going forward, this will continue to be ongoing conversations, and it's just a joy of the board to be able to sit with everyone here and have a back and forth and hear about some things that we probably never even aware of that were happening and what people were thinking about. So this is why we do that. And of course, we're always accessible at any time otherwise. So with that, I will make a motion to adjourn. Mr. Lee, seconded by Mr. Peterson, all in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Good night, everyone. Thank you for coming.